The hegemony flagship Dominion's edge hung in space like a metallic cathedral, its hull gleaming with the confidence of 1,000 conquered worlds. Admiral Vex Kaler adjusted his ceremonial armor as he reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. The humans had been part of the Galactic Council for barely 3 standard cycles, and already they were proving to be an amusing curiosity. Kinetic weapons, he muttered to his tactical officer. Insectoid Zephyrian, whose compound eyes glittered with shared amusement. They still fire metal projectiles through magnetic acceleration. How delightfully primitive. The holographic display showed detailed scans of human military installations. Orbital platforms bristled with what the humans called Railguns, electromagnetic launch systems that hurled chunks of dense metal at incredible velocities. To the hegemony, who had perfected energy shields capable of deflecting plasma beams that could melt asteroids, these weapons seemed as threatening as throwing rocks. "Sir," the Zephyrian clicked, "our intelligence suggests they've been developing these weapons for over 2 centuries. They seem quite proud of their kinetic artillery." Vex Scaler's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. The hegemony had spent millennia perfecting energy-based warfare. Their ships carried plasma cannons that could boil oceans, gravitic disruptors that could tear apart molecular bonds, and shield generators that created impenetrable barriers of pure force. The idea that anyone would still rely on hurling chunks of metal through space was not just backward, it was almost insulting, but the humans had proven useful in other ways. Their ground forces showed remarkable tenacity, and their pilots displayed an almost suicidal bravery that made them excellent shock troops. When properly directed by superior hegemony tactical doctrine, human forces had helped secure 3 contested systems in the Outer Rim. They knew their place in the galactic hierarchy. The communication array chimed. Commander Sarah Chun of a human vessel Defiance appeared in the holographic display, her face bearing the weathered expression of someone who had seen too many battles. "Admiral Vex Kaler," she said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of a career military officer. "We're detecting massive syndicate fleet movements in the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major offensive. The Syndicate, a loose alliance of rebel species who refuse to acknowledge hegemony supremacy. They have been growing bolder recently, striking at supply convoys and isolated outposts." Vex Kaler had expected this escalation. "How many ships, Commander?" he asked, already calculating deployment strategies. "Preliminary scans show at least 400 vessels, including their new dreadnought class. They've been using stealth technology that makes accurate counts difficult, but our best estimate puts their total force at nearly twice the size of our combined fleet." Vex Scaler's confidence wavered slightly. The Syndicate had been acquiring advanced technology from somewhere, weapons that could actually challenge hegemony's shields. Their last encounter had resulted in unexpected casualties. "We'll need to coordinate our response carefully," Chin continued. "I recommend we position the human battle group to provide covering fire while your primary fleet engages their main force." "Covering fire?" Vex Scaler's tone sharpened. "Commander, your railguns are impressive for their historical significance, but against modern shielding technology, kinetic weapons are largely ceremonial. We appreciate human enthusiasm, but leave the real fighting to those equipped for it." The pause that followed felt charged with tension. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a flicker of something that might have been pity. "Of course, Admiral," she said finally, "we'll follow your tactical assessment." As the communication ended, Vex Kaler felt a moment of unease. There had been something in the human commander's tone, a subtle undercurrent that suggested she knew something he didn't. But the feeling passed quickly. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years through superior technology and tactical brilliance. Whatever primitive weapons humanity brought to bear, they would serve their purpose as a distraction while real warships did the actual work. The fleet began its approach to Kepler. 442, hundreds of vessels moving in perfect formation through the vast emptiness of space. Energy shields hummed with power, plasma cannons charged to full capacity, and targeting systems locked onto the coordinates of the coming battle. None of them suspected that everything they thought they knew about human technology was about to change forever. In the depths of the Defiance, Chief Engineer Rodriguez ran final diagnostics on systems that hadn't been activated in over 50 years. "Ma'am," he called Commander Chun, "Project Thunderbolt is ready for deployment. All rail systems are operational. Capacitors are at full charge, and the targeting computer has acquired coordinates." Chun nodded grimly. "Let's hope we don't need it, Chief. But if we do—" She paused, looking out at the stars that would soon become a battlefield. "Make sure that first shot counts." The Kepler 442 system erupted into chaos as two massive fleets materialized from hyperspace. The Syndicate forces had indeed been waiting, their ships arranged in a deadly formation that immediately began pouring fire into the arriving hegemony fleet. Energy beams lanced through space, painting the darkness with brilliant streaks of destruction. Admiral Vex Kaler watched from his command center as his tactical displays filled with threat indicators. The Syndicate had new weapons, particle beams that could actually penetrate hegemony shields, and some kind of quantum disruptor that was causing catastrophic system failures in his outer screening vessels. "All ships, implement defensive formation Beta 7, he commanded. "Focus fire on their command vessels. Human ships, maintain position and provide support as able." The human battle group consisted of 12 vessels, dwarfed by the massive hegemony dreadnoughts that surrounded them. To Vex Scalar sensors, they appeared almost quaint, angular, industrial-looking ships that seemed built more for utility than warfare. Their railgun emplacements were clearly visible, rows of magnetic accelerators that reminded him of ancient siege weapons. The first exchange of fire confirmed his assumptions. Hegemony plasma cannons vaporized entire Syndicate frigates, while their shields absorbed return fire with casual efficiency. Meanwhile, the human ships opened up with their kinetic weapons, sending streams of metal projectiles into space at what their specifications claimed were significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles struck Syndicate shields and bounced off harmlessly, exactly as expected. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human weapons are having no measurable effect on enemy shielding. Their projectile velocities are impressive for kinetic weapons, but insufficient to overcome energy barriers." But something was wrong. The Syndicate fleet was repositioning, and their new formation suggested they were treating the human ships as a much more serious threat than their performance warranted. Several of their heaviest cruisers had actually adjusted course to maintain distance from a human battle group. Commander Chen's voice crackled through the communication array. "Admiral, we're reading massive energy buildups in the Syndicate formation. They're preparing something big." Before Vex Kaler could respond, space itself seemed to tear apart. The Syndicate secret weapon revealed itself, a reality-warping device that created gravitational shears, tearing through hegemony shields like they were paper. 3 of his dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, their matter scattered across light years in the span of seconds. "All ships, emergency evasive maneuvers," Vex Kaler shouted, but the device was already charging for another shot. His fleet, built around the assumption of shield superiority, found itself suddenly vulnerable to an enemy that could ignore their primary defense. The Syndicate pressed their advantage, pouring fire into the confused hegemony formation. Ship after ship disappeared in brilliant explosions as energy barriers that had protected them for centuries proved useless against weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of space-time itself. "Admiral," Chen's voice cut through the chaos, "request permission to implement contingency protocols." "Whatever you can do, Commander, do it now," Vex Kaler replied, watching his fleet dissolution accelerate. "All human vessels are authorized to engage with any available weapon systems." The response was immediate and shocking. Every human ship in the battle group suddenly went dark, their energy signatures dropping to almost nothing. For a moment, Vex Kaler thought they had been destroyed or disabled. Then his sensors detected something impossible. Power readings unlike anything in the hegemony database began emanating from the human vessels. Not the steady hum of plasma reactors or the controlled fusion of antimatter engines, but something far more primitive and infinitely more terrifying. The raw, focused output of every power generation system on each ship being channeled into a single weapon system. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper, "the human ships are drawing power from their life support, their engines, their shields, everything. They're channeling their entire energy output into their magnetic acceleration systems. The Defiance led the formation, its hull glowing with waste heat as massive capacitors charged beyond any rational safety limit. Along its spine, a single railgun, larger than anything shown in previous intelligence reports, began to align with the Syndicate's reality-warping device. "Commander Chun," Vexcaler called urgently, "your ships are operating beyond safe parameters. You're risking total system failure." "Acknowledged, Admiral," came the calm reply. "But sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. Thunderbolt 1 is ready for deployment. All ships, prepare for synchronized fire on my mark." The Syndicate fleet had noticed the power buildup and was attempting to target the human ships, but the gravity weapon required time to recharge, and their conventional weapons were being absorbed by hastily raised hegemony defensive screens. "This is Commander Chun to all human vessels." Her voice carried across multiple frequencies, reaching every ship in the battle group. "Weapons free. Authorization code Prometheus. Fire for effect." What happened next would be debated by military theorists for generations. 12 human ships fired their railguns simultaneously, but these weren't the primitive kinetic weapons the galaxy had dismissed. The projectiles that emerged from the magnetic accelerators were moving at 97% light speed. Their mass increased to relativistic levels that turned each one into a miniature stellar event. The first projectile struck the Syndicate reality weapon before its operators even registered the threat. The impact released energy equivalent to a small star going supernova, completely overwhelming every defensive system the device possessed. But it didn't stop there. The kinetic energy continued to the target and into the 3 massive ships positioned behind it, turning them into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The shockwave that followed illuminated the entire system, a burst of radiation that temporarily overloaded every sensor array within 1,000,000 kilometers. When the displays cleared, the Syndicate secret weapon was gone, along with 17 of their heaviest vessels. The remaining Syndicate ships, suddenly realizing they faced an enemy they had completely underestimated, began an immediate retreat. The aftermath of the battle hung in space like a memorial to shattered assumptions. Debris fields marked where proud Syndicate vessels had been, their hulls twisted into impossible shapes by forces that defied conventional understanding. Admiral Vexcaler stood in stunned silence on his command deck, staring at sensor readings that made no sense according to everything he thought he knew about warfare. "Replay the engagement data," he commanded, his voice barely steady. "Show me exactly what the human weapons did." The holographic display reconstructed the critical moments. The tactical officer's analysis scrolled past in streams of impossible numbers. Projectile velocity at 97.3% light speed. Kinetic energy, release measuring 2.7 times 10 to the power of 47 joules per projectile, relativistic mass effects, creating gravitational distortions that had literally warped local space-time during impact. "Sir," the Zephyrian tactical officer clicked nervously. "According to our physics models, weapons of this type should be impossible to construct. The energy requirements alone would demand the entire power output of a small star. Yet somehow, 12 human vessels generated sufficient electromagnetic force to achieve these velocities, using only their onboard fusion reactors." Vexcaler's mandibles ground together. "Get me Commander Chun. Now." The human appeared on the display, her ship's bridge dim and flickering with the telltale signs of massive power drain. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across her face, and the smell of ozone and burnt electronics was visible in the way her crew moved carefully around damaged stations. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had just pushed technology to its absolute limits. "We're conducting damage assessment now. The Thunderbolt discharge put significant strain on our systems, but we're operational." "Commander," Vexcaler struggled to keep his tone professional. "I need to understand what just happened. Your weapons. They operated far beyond the specifications in our intelligence reports." Jim was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, there was something almost apologetic in her voice. "Admiral, with respect, your intelligence reports were based on our standard combat loadouts. What you witnessed was our deep strike capability, weapon systems we've been developing since first contact with galactic civilization. Deep strike capability? The words felt foreign in his mouth. You mean you've been deliberately concealing the true extent of your military technology? Not concealing, Chin corrected. We simply saw no reason to advertise capabilities that we hope never to use. The Council's policy has been one of measured disclosure. We show enough to be taken seriously, but not enough to be perceived as a threat. The implications hit Vexcaler like a physical blow. Every military assessment, every strategic calculation, every assumption about human capabilities, all of it had been based on deliberately incomplete information. How long have you possessed weapons of this magnitude? The theoretical framework was established about 50 years ago, Chin said, checking something off-screen. But we only achieved practical deployment in the last decade. The power requirements are significant. Each Thunderbolt discharge requires us to completely drain our fusion reactors and redirect the energy through magnetic systems that operate at the very edge of structural failure. And you never thought to inform your allies of this capability? Chen's expression grew grave. Admiral, humanity learned a long time ago that being too powerful too quickly makes you a target rather than an ally. We've watched other species get absorbed into the hegemony when they showed technology you found interesting. Our policy has been to reveal our capabilities gradually, as circumstances warrant. The communication was interrupted by urgent alerts from the sensor array. Long-range scanners were detecting massive fleet movements throughout the sector. Not just syndicate forces, but ships from a dozen different factions, all converging on their position. Sir, the tactical officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from multiple fleet commands. Word of the engagement has spread. Every major power in the sector is demanding immediate intelligence briefings about human weapons capabilities. Vexcaler felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. The galactic balance of power, stable for centuries, was about to undergo a fundamental realignment. Commander Chen, we need to discuss the situation in person. Request permission to come aboard your vessel. Granted, Admiral. But I should warn you, you're not going to like everything you discover. An hour later, Vexcaler found himself in the Defiance's engineering section, staring at technology that shouldn't exist. The Railgun's primary accelerator stretched the entire length of the ship, a magnetic tunnel line with superconducting coils that could generate electromagnetic fields powerful enough to distort local gravity. Chief Engineer Rodriguez, a grizzled human with scarred hands and tired eyes, walked him through the specifications. The trick isn't just accelerating the projectile, he explained, gesturing to the massive capacitor banks. It's doing it without tearing your ship apart in the process. See, when you're dealing with near light speed velocities, you're not just fighting physics, you're negotiating with it. These power requirements, Vexcaler studied the energy flow diagrams. Your ships shouldn't be able to generate sufficient electrical current. They can't, Rodriguez grinned. That's why we cheat. Each shot requires us to create a controlled overload condition that pushes our fusion reactors past their safety limits. We get about 90 seconds of power output. That's roughly 10 times our normal capacity. But the price is that we're completely defenseless during the charge cycle. Chen joined them, carrying a datapad filled with technical specifications that made Vexcaler's head spin. The real innovation isn't the railgun itself. It's the power management system. We learned to store and release enormous amount of energy in very short bursts without destroying our own ships. But the strategic implications, Vexcaler protested, weapons that can penetrate any known defensive system, fired from vessels that appear completely unremarkable. Now you're beginning to understand, Chen said quietly. Every human ship, from the smallest frigate to our largest battleships, carries at least one Thunderbolt-class railgun. We've been building them into our fleet for the past 30 years. The Admiral's legs felt weak. How many ships? Total human fleet strength is classified, but our current deployment includes approximately 8,000 vessels equipped with deep strike capability. 8,000 ships, each carrying weapons that could obliterate anything in space. The hegemony's entire strategic doctrine, built around shield superiority and energy weapons, had just become obsolete overnight. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the Great Spherical Chamber of Station Unity. Representatives from 47 species gathering in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electronic translations. The The tension was palpable as holographic displays showed footage from the Kepler 442 engagement, the devastating effects of human railgun technology playing on endless loop. Counselor Prime Tenesmaker, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in beautiful but cold patterns, called for order with harmonics that resonated through the chamber's acoustic dampeners. The purpose of this emergency session is to address the revelation of previously undisclosed human military capabilities and their implications for galactic security. Admiral Vex Kaler stood at the witness podium, still struggling to process what he had learned aboard the Defiance. Around him, alien faces displayed every emotion from feared anger to calculating interest. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility had taken a severe blow, and every faction was reassessing their position in the galactic hierarchy. Let the record show, Tenesmaker continued, that humanity's representative requested this disclosure session rather than waiting for a formal inquiry. Ambassador Sarah Martinez of Earth will present humanity's statement. The human ambassador rose gracefully, her simple diplomatic attire a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial gear worn by other species. But after witnessing the power of human technology, her understated appearance carried a different weight entirely. Honored counselors, Martinez began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Humanity comes before this assembly not to apologize for our defensive capabilities, but to provide context for decisions made in good faith over the past 50 years. A chorus of angry chittering erupted from the Zephyrian delegation. Their speaker, a massive insectoid whose compound eyes glittered with indignation, rose to object. Good faith? You have deliberately deceived this council about the nature of your military technology. The implications for established power structures are exactly why we made the choices we did. Martinez interrupted calmly. Counselor Vexthon, your own species' history includes 3 different periods where technological advancement led to immediate subjugation by stronger galactic powers. We studied those lessons carefully. The chamber fell silent. Martinez activated a holographic display, showing historical data that made several delegations shift uncomfortably in their seats. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel and made contact with galactic civilization, we found a carefully balanced power structure. The hegemony maintained order through superior technology and military might. Smaller species survived by finding niches that didn't threaten established hierarchies. Revolutionary advances in weapons technology historically led to one of 2 outcomes: absorption into the hegemony military structure or elimination as a potential threat. Admiral Vex Kaler winced. The human assessment was uncomfortably accurate. So we made a deliberate choice, Martinez continued. We would reveal our capabilities gradually, demonstrating enough technological competence to be valuable allies while avoiding the appearance of being a potential rival. Our railgun technology has always been available for inspection. We simply didn't advertise its full potential. Counselor Tenesmaker's crystalline structure pulsed with agitation. But the strategic implications of your concealment extend far beyond council politics. Every military assessment, every defensive calculation, every balance of power equation has been based on incomplete information. Yes, Martinez acknowledged, and that was intentional. We've been preparing for exactly the kind of scenario we face at Kepler 442, an enemy with technology that could overcome traditional defenses. The Syndicate's reality-warping weapon represented exactly the kind of threat that our deep strike capability was designed to counter. A new voice entered the debate. Warlord Krextol of the Marauder clans, a reptilian species known for their military prowess, stood with obvious respect in his bearing. The humans fought with honor and saved hegemony lives. This council should be expressing gratitude, not conducting an inquisition. The issue isn't their performance in battle, snapped the Zephyrian representative. It's the precedent this sets. If humanity has been concealing military capabilities, what other species might be doing the same? How can we maintain stable relationships when we don't know the true strength of our allies or our enemies? Martinez touched her communication device, and the chamber's displays shifted to show technical schematics that made several military representatives lean forward with intense interest. In the interest of full disclosure, she announced, humanity is prepared to share our railgun technology with any council member who requests it. the power management systems, the magnetic acceleration principles, the materials science, all of it. We never intended this knowledge to be exclusively human. The offer sent shock waves through the assembly. Technological sharing on this scale was unprecedented in Council history. However, Martinez continued, we do have one condition. Any species that receives this technology must agree to the same disclosure protocols we followed. No aggressive use against Council members, no threats against civilian populations, and no attempts to use these weapons to reshape existing territorial boundaries. Vex Kaler found himself speaking before he realized it. Ambassador, you're offering to fundamentally alter the balance of galactic military power. Why? Martinez smiled, and for the first time, her expression carried something that might have been pity. Admiral, you still don't understand. The balance of power was already altered the moment we developed this technology. We're simply choosing to share the alteration rather than monopolize it. She activated another display, this one showing star charts with human territories marked in blue. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. Humanity had been strategically positioning themselves near critical hyperlane junctions and resource-rich systems for decades. Humanity has no intention of conquering the galaxy, Martinez said. But we also have no intention of being conquered by it. Our railgun technology ensures that any species that attempt to subjugate Earth or human colonies will find the cost unacceptably high. The chamber erupted in dozens of conversations as representatives realized they were witnessing the birth of a new galactic superpower, one that had been hiding in plain sight for half a century. Counselor Esnicker called for order, but the damage was done. Every species in the chamber was already calculating how this revelation would affect their own position in the galaxy's complex web of alliances and rivalries. In the far corner of the chamber, a small delegation of black-robed figures watched the proceedings with interest that bordered on hunger. The Shadow Collective had remained silent throughout the debate, but their presence at this emergency session suggested they had their own plans for humanity's revealed capabilities. 6 months after the Kepler 442 incident, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could predict it. The Shadow Collective, a mysterious organization that had operated on the fringes of Council space for centuries, finally revealed their true nature, not as simple pirates or smugglers, but as the puppet masters behind the Syndicate Rebellion and a dozen other conflicts throughout galactic history. Admiral Vex Kaler stood in the command center of the Joint Human Hegemony Task Force, watching as long-range sensors tracked the largest fleet movement in recorded galactic history. 3,000 shadow vessels, including ships of unknown design that defied conventional physics, were approaching the Sol system in a formation that suggested they intended to make humanity's homeworld an example. They've been planning this for decades, Commander Chin observed, studying the tactical displays aboard the Defiance. Her ship now flew alongside the Hegemony flagship as an equal partner, their combined technologies creating defensive capabilities neither species could achieve alone. The Syndicate attack was just a probe, designed to force us to reveal our railgun technology. But why? Vex Kaler asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. What do they gain by provoking humanity? Ambassador Martinez appeared on the communication display from Earth's orbital defense platform. Behind her, the blue curve of humanity's homeworld provided a serene backdrop to the approaching catastrophe. Because they've been manipulating galactic civilization for centuries, she explained. Every major conflict, every technological stagnation, every time a species got too advanced too quickly and mysteriously disappeared, the Shadow Collective was pulling the strings. The tactical analysis was sobering. The approaching Shadow Fleet included weapons that could manipulate space-time, antimatter projectors that could sterilize entire star systems, and defensive technologies that seemed to ignore basic physics. Against any conventional galactic military force, they would be unstoppable. But humanity's response had surprised everyone, including their allies. All human colonies have been evacuated? Vex Kaler asked. Negative. Martinez replied calmly. We're not running, Admiral. We're making a statement. Over the past 6 months, humanity had done something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of hoarding their railgun technology or using it for territorial expansion, They had shared it freely with every species that requested it. More than that, they had helped other races develop improvements and variations that suited their particular strengths. The result was a defensive alliance unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Zephyrian ships now carried hypervelocity swarm projectiles that could overwhelm point defenses. Crystalline vessels had developed focused particle beams that could pierce dimensional barriers. Even the peaceful gardener species had contributed bioengineered projectiles that could adapt to their targets mid-flight. Shadow Fleet emergence in 30 minutes, the tactical officer reported. All Allied vessels report ready status. What emerged from hyperspace defied easy categorization. The shadow vessels weren't just technologically advanced. They seemed to operate according to physics that followed different rules entirely. Ships phased in and out of normal space-time. Weapons fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and their defensive systems created pockets of altered reality that deflected incoming fire. The Shadow Commander's transmission reached every vessel in the system simultaneously, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested artificial enhancement. Primitive species of this galaxy, you have interfered with plans millennia in the making. The human contamination will be cleansed, and proper order will be restored. Martinez's response came from Earth's surface, broadcast on every communication frequency in the system. Shadow Collective, you made one critical error in your calculations. You assumed that revealing our capabilities would make us a target. You were right, but you also assumed that would make us weaker. What happened next would be recorded in history as the moment galactic civilization truly began. Every human ship, station, and planetary defense platform in the Sol system fired simultaneously. But they weren't alone. Ships from 43 different species, all equipped with variations of human railgun technology, added their voices to the devastating chorus. The combined kinetic energy release was equivalent to a stellar collision, projectiles moving at near light speed, creating gravitational distortions that warped local space-time. The Shadow Fleet's dimensional defenses, designed to deflect energy weapons and conventional projectiles, found themselves facing an entirely different challenge. Relativistic kinetic weapons didn't just impact their targets. They created localized space-time distortions that pulled shadow vessels out of their dimensional hiding places and forced them back into normal reality, where they became vulnerable to conventional attack. But the real surprise came from Earth itself. The planet's surface lit up with magnetic field generators that had been hidden for 50 years, creating a planetary-scale railgun that used Earth's own rotation to generate the electromagnetic force needed to accelerate a projectile the size of a small asteroid to 99% of light speed. The projectile, humanity called it the Planet Killer, struck the Shadow Fleet's command vessel with the force of a dying star. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, and the gravitational shockwave it created permanently altered the orbital mechanics of the outer planets. In the aftermath, as the surviving shadow vessels retreated into whatever dimensional refuge they called home, the galaxy found itself facing a new reality. Humanity had become the dominant military power not through conquest or intimidation, but by making everyone else stronger. Ambassador Martinez's final transmission reached every inhabited system in the galaxy. The Shadow Collective has manipulated our civilization for centuries, keeping us weak and divided through artificial conflicts. Today, we've shown that united, there is no force in this galaxy that can stand against the combined will of free species. Humanity offers our technology freely, not as a gift, but as an investment in a future where strength comes from cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Vexcaler looked out at the debris field that had once been the most feared fleet in galactic history and realized that everything had changed. The age of the hegemony was ending, not through conquest but through evolution. In its place, something new was being born, a truly galactic civilization built on shared strength rather than imposed order. The humans, with their primitive kinetic weapons and impossible power management systems, had done more than rewrite the balance of power. They had rewritten the rules of civilization itself. And in the depths of space, the retreating shadow vessels carried a message back to their masters. The galaxy was no longer theirs to manipulate. The age of hidden puppeteers was over, ended by a species that had learned the greatest military secret of all, that true strength comes not from the weapons you hide, but from the ones you choose to share.